There is a moment in life when everything becomes quiet. No message, no voices, no one to distract you, just you and your own mind. Most people fear this moment. They call it loneliness. They run from it. But what if this silence is not emptiness? What if it is power? What if the life you've been searching for is waiting for you in that very space you've been avoiding? Stay with me, because once you understand this, you will never fear being alone again. 1. Fear of being alone is fear of your own mind. You are not afraid of being alone. What you truly fear is the moment when there is nothing left to distract you from yourself. Because in silence, the mind does not stay quiet. It begins to speak, and it does not whisper gently at first. It brings forward everything you have been avoiding. Memories that you tried to forget suddenly feel alive again. Conversations you wish had gone differently start replaying in your head. Mistakes you buried deep begin to surface with a strange intensity. Emotions you ignored slowly rise, asking to be seen and understood. This is why silence feels uncomfortable. Not because silence is painful, but because it reveals what is already inside you. Most people never realize this. They believe the problem is loneliness. But the real problem is avoidance. From the moment they wake up, they keep themselves surrounded by noise. Music is always playing. Phones are always in their hands. Conversations fill every empty space. Even when they are alone, they are not truly alone, because they are constantly escaping into something. Why? Because sitting quietly with their own mind feels overwhelming. But here is the truth that Buddhism teaches very clearly. The mind is not your enemy. It only becomes overwhelming when you refuse to understand it. Imagine ignoring a wound for a long time. Instead of cleaning it, you cover it and pretend it does not exist. Over time, it becomes more painful, more sensitive, more difficult to deal with. Your mind works in the same way. Every unprocessed emotion, every suppressed thought, every ignored feeling does not disappear. It stays within you, and when silence comes, it finally gets the chance to speak. This is why running away does not help. The more you avoid your thoughts, the stronger they become. The more you distract yourself, the less control you have over your inner world. And slowly, without realizing it, you become a stranger to your own mind. Buddhism invites you to do something very different. Instead of running, sit. Instead of escaping, observe. Instead of reacting, understand. When a thought arises, do not fight it. Do not judge it. Do not try to push it away. Simply watch it. Notice how it appears. Notice how it changes. Notice how it eventually fades. This simple act of awareness changes everything, because you begin to realize something powerful. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. And once you understand this, the fear begins to disappear. The same thoughts that once overwhelmed you start losing their power. The same silence that once felt heavy begins to feel peaceful, because now silence is no longer a place where you feel trapped. It becomes a space where you feel free, a space where you understand yourself more deeply, a space where your mind slowly becomes calm, not because you forced it, but because you finally listened to it. This is where true strength begins, not in controlling the outside world, but in understanding your inner world, because once you are no longer afraid of your own mind, there is nothing left to fear in being alone. And in that moment, being alone no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like peace. 2. Dependence on people creates inner weakness. The more you depend on people, the more power you give them over your inner world. At first, it does not look dangerous. It feels natural. You enjoy someone's presence. You feel happy when they give you attention. You feel valued when they listen to you. You feel complete when they are around. But slowly, without realizing it, something begins to change. Your happiness starts to depend on them. Your mood begins to rise and fall based on how they treat you. A message from them can make your entire day feel bright. Their silence can make your heart feel heavy. And this is where dependence quietly begins. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It grows silently. Inside your expectations, you start expecting them to understand you. You start expecting them to be available. You start expecting them to care the same way you do. But here is the truth most people ignore. People are not stable. They have their own struggles, their own emotions, their own priorities. Sometimes they will give you attention. Sometimes they will not. Sometimes they will understand you. Sometimes they will fail to see your pain. And when your happiness is tied to something so unstable, your peace becomes unstable too. This is why dependence creates weakness, because you are no longer in control of your emotional state. You have handed that control to someone else. Now, your happiness is no longer yours. It is something you wait for, something you hope for, something you depend on. And this waiting creates suffering. You begin to overthink. You begin to doubt yourself. You begin to feel insecure, even when nothing is actually wrong. Not because the world is against you, but because your emotional foundation is not strong. Buddhism teaches that true strength comes from within, not from how many people care about you, not from how much attention you receive, but from how stable you are in your own presence. This does not mean you stop loving people. It means you stop depending on them for your peace. You can care deeply without losing yourself. You can be connected without becoming attached. You can enjoy someone's presence without needing it to feel complete. This is the difference between love and dependence. Love is free. Dependence is heavy. Love allows people to come and go naturally. Dependence tries to hold on, even when it hurts. And when you depend too much, you begin to tolerate things that disturb your peace. You stay in conversations that drain you. You accept behavior that does not respect you. You ignore your own needs just to keep someone close. Why? Because you are afraid of losing them. But in trying to hold on to them, you slowly lose yourself. Buddhism reminds you of something very important. Your peace should never depend on another person's presence. Because people are temporary, they enter your life for a time, and then they leave. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, and if your happiness is built on them, their absence will feel like emptiness. But when your happiness comes from within, their absence becomes just a change, not a loss. This is real strength. When you can sit alone without feeling incomplete. When you can enjoy your own company without needing distraction. When your mind is calm, even when no one is around. In that state, you are no longer controlled by others. You are free. Free from expectations. Free from emotional dependence. Free from the fear of being left behind. And the most beautiful part is this. When you stop depending on people, your relationships become healthier, because now you are not loving out of need. You are loving out of choice. You are not holding on out of fear. You are connecting out of peace. And this kind of connection is much deeper, much lighter, and much more real. So do not misunderstand this lesson. It is not teaching you to become distant. It is teaching you to become strong. Strong enough to stand alone, strong enough to be peaceful within yourself, strong enough to love without losing your freedom, because the moment your happiness no longer depends on anyone is the moment you become truly powerful. And in that power, you will find a peace that no one can take away from you. 3. Solitude brings clarity. Most people misunderstand solitude. They think it is emptiness. They think it is isolation. They think it is something to avoid. But solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of yourself without distraction. And this is something most people have never truly experienced, because their lives are constantly filled with noise. There is always something playing, always someone to talk to, always something to scroll through, always something to escape into. And slowly, without realizing it, they lose connection with their own mind. They forget what they truly feel. They forget what they truly want. They forget who they really are, because their attention is always outside. Buddhism teaches that clarity does not come from the outside world. It comes from within. But you can only access it when you are willing to be still. Solitude creates that stillness. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, because when the noise disappears, you are left with your raw thoughts. There is nothing to hide behind, no distractions to run to, no voices to drown out your own. And this is where the real process begins. In solitude, your mind starts to reveal itself. You begin to notice patterns. You see how certain thoughts repeat. You see how certain emotions return again and again. You begin to understand what triggers your stress, what creates your anxiety, what disturbs your peace. This awareness is powerful because most people live their entire lives reacting, without ever understanding why they react the way they do. They blame situations, they blame people, they blame circumstances, but they never look within. Solitude forces you to look within, and in that looking, clarity begins to form. You start to separate what truly matters from what does not. Things that once felt important start to lose their weight. Opinions of others start to feel less significant. Unnecessary worries begin to fade because you begin to see them for what they are, temporary. In solitude, you also begin to understand your desires more clearly, not the desires that were influenced by others, not the expectations placed on you by society, but your real desires. What truly brings you peace? What truly aligns with your nature? What truly feels right for your life? This clarity is something no one can give you. It can only be discovered in silence. And the more time you spend in solitude, the deeper this clarity becomes. Your thoughts slow down, your emotions settle, your mind becomes less chaotic. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to choose instead of follow. You begin to live with awareness instead of confusion. This is the transformation solitude brings. It does not change the outside world. It changes how you see it. And once your perception changes, everything begins to feel different. Situations that once disturbed you no longer have the same effect. People who once triggered you no longer control your emotions. Problems that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable, not because life became easier, but because your mind became clearer. Buddhism emphasizes this clarity as the foundation of peace, because without clarity, the mind becomes lost in illusion. You begin to believe every thought. You begin to react to every emotion. You begin to suffer without understanding why. But with clarity, you see thoughts as thoughts. You see emotions as temporary states. You understand that everything passes. And this understanding brings calmness. There is no urgency, no constant need to fix everything, no pressure to control every outcome. There is simply awareness. And in that awareness, there is peace. Solitude also teaches you something even deeper. It shows you that you are enough, not in an ego-driven way, but in a peaceful, grounded way. You realize that you do not need constant company to feel complete. You do not need constant validation to feel worthy. You do not need noise to feel alive. Your presence is enough. Your awareness is enough. Your inner world is enough. This realization is life-changing, because once you truly understand this, You stop chasing things that do not serve you. You stop seeking approval from people who do not understand you. You stop filling your life with unnecessary distractions. You become more intentional, more calm, more centered, and, most importantly, more free. Free from confusion, free from emotional chaos, free from the constant need for external stimulation. Solitude is not something to fear, it is something to respect, because within it lies a clarity that cannot be found anywhere else. A clarity that shows you who you are, what you need, and what truly matters. And once you experience this clarity, you will no longer see solitude as emptiness. You will see it as a powerful space, where your mind becomes still, your thoughts become clear, and your life begins to align naturally. 4. Letting go creates inner freedom. One of the deepest sources of suffering in life is holding on to people, holding on to expectations, holding on to moments that no longer exist. At first, it feels like strength. You believe you are being loyal. You believe you are being patient. You believe you are protecting something valuable. But slowly, holding on begins to hurt, because not everything you hold on to is meant to stay. Some people change. Some relationships fade. Some situations outgrow their place in your life. And yet, the mind resists. It says, maybe it will go back to how it was. 2. It says, maybe if I try harder, things will fix. It says, I cannot let this go. This resistance creates suffering, not because things changed, but because you refuse to accept the change. Buddhism teaches a simple truth. Everything in life is temporary. People, emotions, situations, even your own thoughts, they all come and go. Nothing stays the same. But the mind wants stability. It wants certainty. It wants permanence. And when reality does not match this desire, pain begins. Letting go is not about losing something. It is about understanding the nature of life. When you truly understand that everything is temporary, you stop fighting change. You stop trying to control what cannot be controlled. And in that moment, something shifts inside you. You begin to loosen your grip. You begin to accept what is. You begin to allow life to move naturally without forcing it. This is where inner freedom begins. Because as long as you are holding on tightly, you are trapped. Trapped in expectations. Trapped in fear. Trapped in the past. But when you let go, you create space. Space for peace. Space for clarity. Space for new experiences to enter your life. Most people are afraid of letting go. They think letting go means they will lose everything. They think it means giving up. They think it means they no longer care. But this is not true. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing. It means you stop holding on to something that is no longer aligned with your peace. You can still love someone and let them go. You can still value a memory and release your attachment to it. You can still appreciate what once was without trying to bring it back. This is mature understanding, because forcing something to stay only creates more suffering. Imagine holding sand in your hand. The tighter you hold it, the faster it slips away. But when you relax your hand, it stays naturally. Life works the same way. The more you try to control it, the more it resists. The more you allow it, the more it flows. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering, not love, but attachment. Attachment is when you say, I need this to stay for me to be okay. And this need creates fear. Fear of losing, fear of change, fear of being alone. But when you let go of attachment, fear begins to disappear, because now your peace is no longer dependent on anything external. You are no longer holding on to people to feel complete. You are no longer holding on to outcomes to feel secure. You are no longer holding on to the past to feel comfort. You become present, fully present, and in the present moment, there is no fear. There is only awareness. Letting go also teaches you trust. Trust in life. Trust that what is meant for you will stay. Trust that what leaves was never truly yours to keep. This trust removes anxiety because now you are no longer trying to control every outcome. You are allowing life to unfold naturally, and when life unfolds naturally, it often brings something better than what you were holding on to. But you can only experience that when you create space. Holding on blocks that space. Letting go opens it. This is why letting go is powerful. It is not weakness. It is one of the highest forms of strength. It takes strength to walk away from what disturbs your peace. It takes strength to release what no longer serves you. It takes strength to accept what you cannot change. And the more you practice this, the lighter you begin to feel. The emotional weight you were carrying slowly disappears. The constant tension in your mind begins to relax. You stop overthinking. You stop replaying the past. You stop trying to fix what is already gone. And instead, you begin to live freely, peacefully, without unnecessary burden. Letting go also transforms your relationships, because now you are not connecting from a place of need. You are connecting from a place of wholeness. You are not trying to hold people close out of fear. You are allowing them to be as they are. And this creates healthier, more genuine connections, because there is no pressure, no control, no expectation, only presence. And presence is the purest form of connection. In the end, letting go is not about losing something important. It is about releasing what is preventing your peace. It is about understanding that life is always changing, and resisting that change only creates suffering. When you truly accept this, you stop holding on so tightly. You begin to flow with life, instead of fighting it. And in that flow, you discover something beautiful, a sense of freedom that cannot be explained, a calmness that does not depend on circumstances, a peace that stays even when everything else changes. Because now you are no longer attached, and when you are no longer attached, you are finally free. 5. True happiness comes from within. Most people spend their entire lives searching for happiness in the outside world. They believe it is somewhere ahead of them, in a person, in a relationship, in success, in recognition, in achieving something they do not yet have. And for a moment, when they get these things, they feel happy. But that happiness never stays. It fades, and then the search begins again. A new desire appears. A new goal forms. A new expectation is created. And the cycle continues. This is how most people live, constantly chasing a happiness that always feels just out of reach. Buddhism teaches that this kind of happiness is not real happiness. It is temporary pleasure. It depends on conditions. And anything that depends on conditions can change. When your happiness depends on someone's behavior, it becomes unstable. When it depends on success, it rises and falls. When it depends on outcomes, it creates anxiety, because you are always waiting for something to happen before you allow yourself to feel complete. But true happiness does not work like this. It is not something you achieve, it is something you realize. It already exists within you, but it is hidden beneath layers of desire, hidden beneath constant thinking, hidden beneath the belief that you are incomplete. From a young age, you were taught that happiness comes from outside. You were taught to achieve more, to gain approval, to become something better. And slowly, you started believing that who you are right now is not enough. So you began to chase. You chased validation. You chased attention. You chased success. But every time you reached something, the satisfaction was temporary, because the mind always wants more. This is the nature of desire. It never ends. And as long as you follow it, you will always feel like something is missing. Buddhism invites you to look deeper, to question this constant search, to understand that the problem is not that you do not have enough. The problem is that you believe you are not enough, and this belief creates endless restlessness. True happiness begins the moment you stop searching for completion outside and start discovering it within. But how does this happen? It begins with awareness. When you become aware of your thoughts, you begin to see how they create your emotional state. You notice how one negative thought can disturb your peace. You notice how expectations create tension. You notice how comparison creates dissatisfaction. And, slowly, you begin to understand that your experience of life is not created by the world. It is created by your mind. This realization is powerful because it means that peace is not something you need to find. It is something you need to uncover. When you stop chasing, the mind begins to settle. When the mind settles, clarity appears. And within that clarity, you begin to feel something different. A quiet sense of contentment. Not excitement, not intense pleasure, but a deep, steady calmness. This is true happiness. It is not loud. It does not depend on anything. It is simply a state of being, a state where you are at peace with what is. When you are no longer fighting reality, when you are no longer resisting what you cannot control, when you are no longer chasing something to complete you, you begin to feel whole, and in that wholeness, there is happiness. This does not mean you stop enjoying life. You can still achieve goals. You can still build relationships. You can still experience joy. But now, these things are not your source of happiness. They are expressions of it. You are not seeking happiness through them. You are sharing your inner happiness with them. This changes everything, because now your peace is stable. It is not affected by every small change. It is not shaken by people's opinions. It is not dependent on constant success. It remains, even when life becomes difficult. Buddhism also teaches acceptance as a path to inner happiness. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means understanding reality as it is, without resistance. When you resist reality, you create suffering. When you accept it, you create peace. For example, if something does not go your way, the mind reacts. It complains. It wishes things were different. This reaction creates stress. But when you accept the situation, you remove the unnecessary suffering. You deal with reality calmly and clearly, and this calmness supports your inner happiness. Gratitude is another doorway to this realization. When you constantly focus on what is missing, you train your mind to feel incomplete. But when you begin to notice what is already present, you shift your perspective. You begin to see that your life is not empty. You begin to appreciate simple moments. You begin to feel content with less. And this contentment is a powerful form of happiness. It is not dependent on having more. It is based on seeing clearly. Another important understanding is this. You cannot find lasting happiness in a restless mind. As long as your mind is constantly chasing, comparing, judging, it will never be satisfied. So, instead of trying to control everything outside, you begin to calm your mind through awareness, through stillness, through understanding. And as your mind becomes calm, happiness begins to reveal itself naturally, not because you forced it, but because you removed what was blocking it. In the end, true happiness is not something you create. It is something that remains when everything unnecessary is removed, when the noise settles, when the desires quiet down, When the mind becomes clear, what is left is peace. And that peace is happiness. A happiness that does not depend on people. A happiness that does not depend on success. A happiness that does not come and go. A happiness that stays because it comes from within. And once you experience this, you will stop searching, because you will realize everything you were looking for was already inside you. 6. Being alone builds inner strength. Most people avoid being alone, not because they cannot handle silence, but because they have never discovered what silence can give them. From a young age, you are conditioned to believe that strength comes from outside. You are told that having many people around you means you are valued. You are taught that being supported by others means you are strong. You are made to believe that connection is the source of stability. And while connection is important, depending on it for your strength is where the problem begins. Because the moment your strength depends on others, it becomes fragile. If people support you, you feel confident. If they doubt you, you feel weak. If they stay, you feel secure. If they leave, you feel broken. This is not real strength. This is borrowed strength. And anything that is borrowed can be taken away. Buddhism teaches that true strength must come from within, a strength that does not shake when people come and go, a strength that does not disappear when life becomes uncertain, a strength that remains, even in complete solitude. But this kind of strength cannot be developed in constant distraction. It is built in moments of aloneness, because when you are alone, there is nothing to rely on except yourself. No one to reassure you, no one to validate you, no one to distract you from your thoughts. At first, this feels uncomfortable, because you are not used to depending on yourself emotionally. You are used to reaching out. You are used to seeking comfort from others. You are used to escaping difficult emotions. But when you are alone, you are forced to face everything directly. Your fears, your doubts, your insecurities. And this is where real growth begins. Because instead of running from these things, you begin to understand them. You begin to see where your fears come from. You begin to recognize the patterns in your thinking. You begin to realize that many of your insecurities are not facts, but assumptions. This awareness is the foundation of inner strength, because strength is not the absence of fear, it is the understanding of it. When you understand your fear, it loses its control over you. And the more time you spend alone, the more this understanding deepens. You start to rely less on external reassurance and more on your own clarity. You start to trust your own decisions. Instead of constantly seeking approval, you start to stand firm in your own presence, without needing constant support. This is how inner strength is built, slowly, quietly, deeply. Being alone also teaches you emotional independence. It teaches you that you can feel difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can feel sadness without falling apart. You can feel uncertainty without losing direction. You can feel discomfort without needing to escape. This is powerful because most people are controlled by their emotions. They react immediately. They seek quick relief. They avoid discomfort at all costs. But when you learn to sit with your emotions, you stop being controlled by them. You become stable. Your emotions come and go, but you remain grounded. This stability is strength. Another important aspect of being alone is self-trust. When you are constantly surrounded by others, you often look to them for answers. You ask for opinions. You wait for approval. You depend on others to guide your decisions. But when you are alone, you have no choice but to listen to yourself. At first, this feels uncertain. You question your choices. You doubt your direction. But over time, something changes. You begin to trust your own judgment. You realize that you are capable of making decisions. You realize that you can learn from your mistakes. You realize that you do not need constant validation to move forward. This trust builds confidence, not the loud, external confidence that seeks attention, but a quiet, internal confidence that remains steady. A confidence that says, "I can handle this, no matter what happens." And this confidence is not easily shaken, because it is not based on others. It is based on your own experience with yourself. Being alone also removes illusions. When you are constantly around people, it is easy to define yourself based on their opinions. You start to act in ways that gain approval. You adjust your behavior to fit expectations. You shape your identity around how others see you. But in solitude, these influences disappear. There is no one to impress, no one to compare yourself with, no one to perform for. And in that absence, you begin to see your true self, not the version shaped by others, but the version that exists naturally. This self-awareness is strength, because once you know who you are no longer easily influenced. You are no longer trying to be someone else. You are no longer seeking constant validation. You are simply being, and this authenticity brings a deep sense of peace. Another powerful lesson solitude teaches is resilience. Life is unpredictable. People will leave. Situations will change. Unexpected challenges will arise. If your strength depends on stability outside, these changes will break you. But if your strength comes from within, you remain steady. Being alone prepares you for this. It shows you that you can stand on your own. It shows you that you can rebuild. It shows you that you can continue, even when things fall apart. This resilience is what allows you to move through life without fear, because you know, no matter what happens, you will be okay. Not because everything will go your way, but because you have built the strength to handle whatever comes. Buddhism also teaches that attachment weakens the mind. The more attached you are, the more you fear losing, and fear weakens your inner stability. But when you are comfortable being alone, attachment begins to loosen. You are no longer holding on tightly to people or outcomes. You are no longer afraid of losing what you have, because you know that your peace does not depend on it. This detachment is not coldness. It is freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from emotional dependence. Freedom from constant worry. And in this freedom, your strength becomes unshakable. In the end, being alone is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace, because within it lies the opportunity to build a strength that no one can give you and no one can take away. A strength that is calm, a strength that is steady, a strength that remains no matter what changes around you. And once you build this strength, you will no longer fear being alone, because you will realize that in your own presence you are already strong enough. 7. Fearless solitude leads to true freedom. Most people believe freedom means having more choices, more people, more opportunities, more control over life. But if you look closely, even with all of these things, the mind is still restless. It still worries. It still fears loss. It still feels incomplete. Why? Because true freedom is not about what you have outside. It is about what you are no longer dependent on inside. And the deepest form of this freedom is born in fearless solitude. Not the kind of solitude that feels forced or painful, but the kind you enter willingly with understanding. The kind where you are not escaping life, but finally facing it without distraction. Fearless solitude begins the moment you stop running. Running from silence. Running from your thoughts. Running from the discomfort of being with yourself. Instead of escaping, you remain. You sit in stillness. And at first, the mind reacts. It brings up noise. It throws thoughts at you. It reminds you of everything you tried to avoid. But you do not move. You do not chase those thoughts. You do not resist them. You simply observe. And, slowly, something begins to change. The mind starts to settle. The noise becomes less intense. The thoughts become less controlling. The emotions become easier to understand. This is the beginning of inner freedom, because for the first time, you are no longer controlled by your own mind. Most people live in constant reaction. A thought arises, they follow it. An emotion appears, they become it. A situation changes, they lose their balance. They are not free. They are controlled by every internal and external movement. But in solitude, with awareness, you begin to step back. You see thoughts without becoming them. You feel emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You experience life without losing yourself in it. And this distance creates freedom. Freedom from overthinking. Freedom from emotional chaos. Freedom from the constant need to control everything. This is why Buddhism emphasizes awareness. Because awareness separates you from what you experience. You are no longer trapped inside your reactions. You become the observer, and the observer is always free. Fearless solitude also breaks one of the deepest illusions of the mind, the belief that you need something outside to feel complete. This belief controls most people's lives. They think they need someone to love them, someone to understand them, someone to stay with them, in order to feel whole. But this belief creates fear. Fear of losing people, fear of being rejected, fear of being alone. And this fear limits your freedom, because now your actions are not based on clarity. They are based on fear. You stay where you are not at peace, because you fear being alone. You tolerate what hurts you, because you fear losing connection. You hide your truth, because you fear rejection. This is not freedom. This is attachment. But when you become fearless in solitude, this illusion breaks. You realize that you can be alone and still feel complete. You realize that your peace does not depend on another person's presence. You realize that your happiness is not something others give you. It is something you allow within yourself. And this realization changes everything. Because now you are no longer acting out of fear. You are acting out of understanding. You can walk away from what disturbs your peace without hesitation. You can speak your truth without needing approval. You can stand alone without feeling empty. This is real freedom, not the freedom to control life, but the freedom to remain stable, regardless of what life brings. Fearless solitude also removes the fear of loss. As long as you are attached, loss feels painful, because you believe something essential is being taken away from you. But when you are rooted in yourself, nothing external feels essential anymore. You appreciate people, but you do not depend on them. You enjoy experiences, but you do not cling to them. You accept change without resisting it. And because of this, loss no longer feels like destruction. It feels like transition. Something ends, something else begins, and you remain at peace through both. This is the power of detachment, not indifference, but freedom from dependence. Another important transformation that happens in fearless solitude is the end of constant seeking. Most people are always seeking something: a better situation, a better relationship, a better version of themselves. They are always moving, always chasing, always trying to reach a point where they can finally feel satisfied. But that point never comes, because the mind always creates a new desire. In solitude, when you stop chasing, you begin to see this clearly. You see how endless the cycle is. You see how it keeps you restless. You see how it prevents you from ever feeling content. And slowly, you stop participating in it. You stop chasing what you do not have, You stop comparing your life with others. You stop waiting for something to complete you. And in that stopping, something beautiful happens. You feel complete as you are, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer resisting imperfection. This is inner peace, and this peace is freedom, because now your happiness is not delayed. It is not dependent on future outcomes. It exists in the present moment. Fearless solitude also deepens your connection with life itself. When you are not constantly distracted, you begin to notice things you once ignored. The simplicity of breathing, the stillness of the moment, the quiet presence of existence. You begin to feel life instead of constantly thinking about it. And this awareness brings a deep sense of connection, not with people, but with existence itself. And this connection is fulfilling. It does not create attachment. It does not create fear. It simply creates presence. And presence is freedom. In the end, fearless solitude leads you to a place where you no longer need anything to feel complete. Not because you reject the world, but because you are no longer dependent on it. You can live fully without being controlled. You can love deeply without being attached. You can experience life without fearing its changes. The W4. This is the highest form of freedom, a freedom that is not given by the world and cannot be taken by it. A freedom that comes from understanding yourself so deeply that nothing external can disturb your peace. And once you reach this state, you will realize that being alone was never the problem. It was the doorway to clarity, the doorway to strength, the doorway to peace, and, most importantly, the doorway to true freedom. In the end, everything you were running from was not outside you. It was within you. The silence you feared was not empty. It was waiting for you to listen, waiting for you to understand, waiting for you to finally meet yourself without distraction. Most people spend their entire lives escaping this moment. They fill their days with noise. They surround themselves with people. They chase things that never truly satisfy. But you chose something different. You chose to pause. You chose to reflect. You chose to understand. And that choice changes everything. Because the moment you become comfortable in your own presence, you stop depending on the world to feel complete. You stop chasing. You stop forcing. You stop fearing loss. And in that stillness, you discover something powerful, a peace that does not shake, a strength that does not break, a happiness that does not depend on anyone. Remember this deeply. Being alone is not your weakness. It is your power. It is the place where you rebuild yourself. It is the place where you understand life. It is the place where you become free. So do not run from silence. Sit in it. Do not fear being alone. Grow in it, because once you become fearless in your own company, you will realize you were never missing anything. You were only searching outside for what was always within you.